to me, what makes a good beat 'em up and what some of my more favorite ones were. I kind of mentioned in a previous podcast that beat 'em ups are games that I will go back to frequently because they usually tell some sort of even if it's just implied, they tell some sort of wacky story from start to finish, and it's like watching a really cheap, awful interactive movie.
Really, you go that far with it?
To a degree. I mean, watching Final Fight, there's a storyline, kind of to it. There's a progression, and it's weird, and from the alley to the wrestling ring to breaking out. So, I think the design of a beat 'em up is pretty important because beat 'em ups still kind of exist to this day.
Kind of, they do. They still make new ones or remakes. Yeah.
Well, what I'm referring to is you look at the 3D brawlers like God of War and Devil May Cry. These are some of my least favorite games. But it's because beat 'em ups were meant to be bite-sized and kind of beatable, hard, quick, and when it's in a small dose, the beat 'em up formula works very, very well. When it's in a long, drawn-out 8-hour, 9-hour, 10-hour game, I find it to be far less charming. So I find that brevity is a quality in a beat 'em up. About an hour max.
Yeah.
We're
talking an arcade beat 'em up, 45 minutes.
45 minutes to an hour. Multiple characters. I want differences between light, medium, fast. Even though one of my favorites is Final Fight, I appreciate ones that have a slightly more expanded moveset, like Streets of Rage 2, 3. And I really like it, and although I like a lot of beat 'em ups that have this, I hate it when the special move takes away health. That's one of the things I've always hated.
I don't, but
the desperation move, I don't like it when it takes.
Okay, here's the caveat.
Okay.
I do like when X-Men gave you like 3, then after that it took away energy. Because otherwise, just use this special move the entire time. What's the fun of that? What's the challenge?
See, X-Men is one of my least favorite. It should have just been designed better from the start.
But it's special because you're not supposed to always be able to use it. Unless you have a charge feature, you only use it once every minute. Would you rather have that?
I'd rather have a refilling bar. But a refilling gauge or something like that.
There has to be some sort of penalty to using it. Otherwise, just go nuts with it. There's no fun in playing X-Men with unlimited credits because people just use a special power and destroy the game easily. What's the fun of playing it?
Well, that's what people do.
There has to be some structure to control how you play that.
I think balanced combat should be that structure. You don't need to have an overpowered move if you have ways to... The overpowered moves are generally used when you're getting overwhelmed by enemies on screen and your normal attacks can't handle it. So in a game like, say, Streets of Rage 2, where you have a little bit more options, you don't always have to resort to that move. And that there is a move that takes away your life in Streets of Rage, but you generally have a couple other options that you can use first if you plan well before you need to use it. What I'm getting at is design does not always require you to have something that requires a penalty. You can have a strong move without it requiring penalty.
Sure, but then there has to be a balance, like you said. Then you can't just use it willy-nilly. You have to have either some sort of recharge for it, like Alien versus Predator, or you have to have a penalty. You have to. You can't just run around Final Fight doing the spin kick the entire time and never be getting touched. What's the fun of it?
Well, no, I mean... Like I said, that's designed, and you structure it differently. What I like is in some of the later Final Fights that they did on the Super Nintendo, special moves would be inputted using Street Fighter-type motions. And because there's warm-up to these moves, there's charge-up to these moves, there's inputs that have to be done, you're inherently taking a risk by using some of these stronger moves. It's easier to get caught off guard, and that's a way to...
That's a way to balance, I guess.
That's a way to make it balance.
So,
exactly.
so maybe there's a...
Make it more complicated.
Maybe there's a fatigue afterwards where you can't move.
Instead of punch, kick, 2 buttons for special, you start incorporating more complex controls in there that, like I said, inherently make it more dangerous to use higher risk maneuvers. I think it's like jumping off a top turnbuckle.
Yeah, high risk maneuver. I used to love when they used that in video games where it wasn't high risk.
Yeah.
Like I remember
in video games.
Hell,
wrestling matches.
This is the beat 'em up. Remember the WrestleMania, the arcade game?
Yes.
That was a beat 'em up. That wasn't a wrestling game.
Yeah, that was a great one.
They'd say high risk maneuver when you're doing a suplex or powerbomb. That's not a high risk maneuver. High risk is when you're jumping off a top rope or jumping out of the ring. That's a high. Or, you know what I mean? Even a drop kick's a high risk versus a power bomb. I love that game. I figured all the combos for Razor Ramon is my favorite. Anyway,
so there are some more modern beat 'em ups that have been made. There's Dragon's Crown, which is phenomenal. All hand drawn.
Haven't played that.
It's all like watercolor and painted, and It's got a grindfest RPG vibe to it. There's like 9 levels you go through, and you get more equipment and better equipment. So basically, it's made by I can't remember his name, head of Vanillaware. He's the guy who handled Capcom's D&D beat 'em ups, which are fantastic. So this is basically the spiritual successor to the D&D beat 'em ups. And then the 3DS has seen some like weird single screen ones, like Senran Kagura, which is mostly known for the boobs on its main characters.
That's always great. That's like half the beat 'em ups now.
And Coda Princess, which I have and is fun. But
which is the one I like that was mostly female characters that we played, remember, like last year?
That's a fighting game.
Oh, it was a fighting game.
And I think you're talking about Arcana Heart 3 when we played that.
Yeah, I like that one.
That was really good.
I was thinking about boobs. Anyway.
they're fantastic. But, so, yeah, fighters are different. Although, in Europe, fighters are called beat 'em ups, which is fairly
Really?
funny. Yep.
Yeah.
So, there are modern ones being made, which is cool to see it still happening, but I would love to see a return to something like, just like a straightforward final fight.
Sure.
So what are among your favorites? Because I mean, I can rattle off mine pretty quick. I love Final Fight. Final Fight 1 arcade version.
Final Fight
is phenomenal, and I will play it. I'll play it every couple of months.
Because you have to, because that was the template for all beat 'em ups to come afterwards.
After, sure.
Yeah, that's what's so important. There wasn't that many before. I loved the original Double Dragon just because it was the prototype. I know Renegade came before, but Double Dragon did it well for its time. It did it and it was fun. And Double Dragon was the first arcade game of mine that was a favorite after like Spy Hunter. I know they say Spy Hunter, but Double Dragon was one I would rush to.
Sure.
Then it was Double Dragon, then it was Final Fight, like a few years later.
I would say for consoles, at least on the early consoles, I love Double Dragon 2. And River City Ransom is of course a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, it is.
But I really feel like River City Ransom is better with 2 players.
I almost wouldn't call it a beat 'em up. I almost would call it like an adventure game, but that's just me. Due to the fact that it's
open, but I mean it's still a beat 'em up at heart.
It is. It's more an action game to me because I get for me a beat 'em up is your same experience every time. That to me is like a beat 'em up more or less. But whatever, we're splicing hairs there.
And then Alien vs Predator is my all-time favorite.
And it's still a crime. It's never been ported. It's never ported over anywhere.
We have it at Luna for our CPS2 Highness, and we got it for really cheap. It's a fairly expensive board to get. Got it for cheap because the guy put it on eBay as Alien vs Predator. So the joke has always been in our head that like we were gonna get some wacky bootleg that was just like a dude, maybe male pattern baldness, walking home from the grocery store, has to fight off some predators, with a bag of groceries.
Or he's a child predator.
Alan
the Predator.
So that was funny. But I actually looked at Trig the one day after we had it. It was like after like a month, and I said, you should probably take that out of the machine because I'm not doing anything at work. I said, I'm just playing this because it was just so refreshing because it hasn't been ported. It had been years since I played it, and I was
is it still not on any system, even a download?
Still not on any system.
Even The Simpsons already finally got on a system.
And I binged on it. And then one that I don't think a lot of people played, but you can play it on like the PS2 Taito collection, or you can check it out on MAME, is Ninja Kids by Taito. It is one of the most bizarre beat 'em ups I've ever played.
I never saw that in the arcade.
It's insane. I mean, there's a reason why you probably never saw it. You're fighting devils, and it's.
Did it came out in U.S. arcades?
I don't believe it came out in U.S. arcades. I've played it. I played it on collections, but I've played through it a couple of times.
Heard of it?
It's got a really weird art style too. They look like very angry, like Muppets, kind of. I would definitely check out Ninja Kids.
How about Knights of the Round was pretty good. Mm-hmm. You can level up the different characters. First of all, I love beat 'em ups where the different characters have different play style. That's why Alien vs Predator was so important in ushering that in.
Guardian, you ever play Guardian Heroes on the Saturn?
No.
That's a really good one for that. It's a weirder beat 'em up. I'm surprised you haven't played that. It's considered one of the gems of the Saturn, but it's longer, so there's like a storyline, but it's just straight up beat 'em up gameplay. And there's 3 characters that play completely differently, but what it does is instead of moving on an isometric plane, you jump between 3 planes back and forth. Okay. So when you're fighting, you actually play it like a fighting game on the plane that you're on. So you can do launches and combos and all sorts of crazy shit, and then jump back and forth between the planes to keep it going.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's really fun. Yeah, that's a great one.
the Dungeons and Dragons one, which they finally put on. They put
both of them on there.
I think I only played one of them.
Just
that's an arcade game you don't see too often. I don't think they made a lot of those.
No, they did not.
That's a great one. I like the X-Men one. I know you say you don't. I think the animation and graphics are fantastic.
For as big of an X-Men fan as I am, I can't stand that game.
So what do you like about the X-Men one?
I just don't like it. I just don't like how it plays.
Well, that's one that I do have a problem with, where all the characters fight the same. Even though they have different attacks, it's all the same. You do a pin down attack for each.
Yeah.
The powers are all roughly the same. They're a little different between them. Some hit part of the screen. Some go just straight forward. But all the characters move almost the same.
When I first saw it, I mean, when at my brother's birthday party, I remember the arcade machine was wherever we had it, and that's all any of us spent our tokens on. And I loved it then. It was just revisiting it later. I didn't like it nearly as much. Oh, and I would be doing a great disservice to the game, but I love the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
Oh, it's fantastic.
If you're playing the original, in the arcade or an arcade perfect version, the Nintendo version is really not good.
And that's what I always said. I always said to people that I would have loved the Turtles arcade game, would have owned it if I never played the arcade game. Even as a kid, I was a snob. I was like, this isn't close to the arcade game. I was not interested in playing it as a kid.
It just feels so stuttered and choppy.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Compared to the arcade was great because it was so fluid. The way you grab a guy with your weapon and toss him, that was nowhere to be seen in the NES game. They couldn't figure that out at all.
And that game is one that...
This is the NES attack. It's like just two arms going, and it's like...
And that along with Final Fight is one of the beat 'em ups that I think has one of the more cohesive, simple to follow stories. As you go along, the plot points move from A to B to C, and I like that about it.
You're dead, Toidles.
Yeah.
So what's another one? I love The Simpsons arcade game. Great use of the license, fantastic use of it for something like that.
So, as someone who was never a huge Simpsons fan, I never got a ton out of it, but I can even admit that it was just a very well done game.
The team attacks you can do,
the little mini games where you inflate the hot air balloons in between.
They just packed. They did the most with that they could have. You can't think of that much more they could have done. The way the graphics would blow up and the cheap effects they did with that,
the sprite scaling and stuff.
Whoops! Oh, there goes the DVD. Yeah, just an enjoyable game. Even the little stuff when you die as Bart, you're Bart man when you come back to life. Just the little touches that show they Konami put a ton into that.
Yep.
And so yeah, and again that was one that was never on a system, unfortunately. So you had a lot of these great beat 'em ups. Hell, even the only good Final Fight port was on Sega CD.
They finally did an arcade perfect one for Xbox Live, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, talking back then.
Sure, yeah.
You know how pissed I was?
The Super Nintendo one.
Do you know how pissed I was that I would have forked out $70 if they just had two players and had Guy in it? That's it. That $70. Here you go.
Yeah, the missing level is my least favorite level in the game, so that's not even.
That's not a big deal. Man.
That's not even the biggest problem.
The
problem is no two players, no Guy.
We can't fit the ROM chips in until 2 years later. We come out with the sequel. It's like,
yeah.
What? What are you doing? You're telling me they came out with a Street Fighter 2 that was close to the arcade, but they couldn't do it for Final Fight? That doesn't make any sense to me.
People still eat it up because I'm one of those people who has to be bluntly honest when people buy games. They're like, let me get Final Fight for the Super Nintendo, and I said, it's only one player. And every once in a while, I get a person who goes, oh, right, and they won't buy it. But most people are like, I don't care. I'm like, what are you... It's awful. It's awful. What are you playing? Anything else would be better.
Even... God. And then, of course, there's no Guy. They couldn't fit another character in.
They could have.
My favorite character!
Calm yourself.
I never used Hager.
I didn't when I was younger, and now I use Hager all the time.
Well, now, okay. Well, now I switch it up. I like switching it up.
Yeah.
I love doing the pile driver.
Yeah.
I love headbutting him a few times and doing the pile driver to maximum damage.
He's the mayor!
Here!
You are action mayor Mike Hagar. You're taking it to the streets.
I love how Saturday Night Slam Masters is like the prequel. You love that?
Yeah.
One of the first prequels in video game history, I think. Slam Masters is a great beat 'em up. You can't call that a wrestling game. It's a beat 'em up. Saturday Night Slam Masters. You can't call it a wrestling game. It's not a wrestling game when...
No, I mean, like I said, there's been this revitalization recently of what are kind of known as single-screen beat 'em ups, or and you could easily call something like Saturday Night Slam Masters a single-screen beat 'em up.
And I did use the Mexican wrestler in Saturday Night Slam Masters, the one with the mask. What was his name? That's what I used though. I only used him. I didn't use Machine Gun Mike or whatever. Or I didn't use Hager. I didn't use some of the other guys. Was it Machine Gun Mike? I forget. It was some weird name. But anyway, other beat 'em ups real quick. What were the overlooked ones? Did you ever play? What was that one? I can't think of it now. I just went blank. Save me.
The Spider-Man one is.
Oh, Spider-Man! You never heard it. That was so great. How you never heard it? You finally played it and you loved it.
I didn't even know about that one. That one's really good.
Because you love my MAME cabinet for that because you got to play it on
I hate
there.
your MAME cabinet.
Wish it worked right now.
Yeah, Spider-Man's fun because it has a neat blend of the isometric levels and the those weird 2D.
The 2D ones they throw in every. There's like three.
Those were pretty fun, and
the graphics are fantastic. The sprites are so huge in that game.
Yeah,
it's It was 4 players. It's Submariner as a playable character. It's just cool, even though he was not Spider-Man's ally ever, as far as I know. You had Black Cat, which makes sense. You had Hawkeye, which is bizarre. I don't remember reading ever a Spider-Man comic where Hawkeye showed up, but he was in there, which is funny because at the same time he was in the Captain America game, so you got like double duty, which was weird. And you had Submariner, which was cool.
The only other one that's a bit under the radar that I like is Riot Zone for the PC Engine or the TurboGrafx. It's a CD-based game.
Yeah, I played that.
And it's only one player, but it's just, it's fun. I don't hate it. I like it.
That's kind of weird. Just real quick, going back to Spider-Man, that was never ported either. That was a Sega game. That wasn't even on like the Saturn. Like what's with all those mid-90s, early mid-90s games not being on the Sega?
Because they're all, well, I think it's a pretty easy answer. They all have licenses. And
just for the arcade, though?
And those licenses got swapped around so quick. Those are all hot properties. Aliens, Predators, Simpsons,
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the only answer I can give. Is that
I guess, the X-Men wasn't ported either.
Yeah, the X-Men. So those licenses just changed hands way too quickly to ever get truly ported.
They probably got them for like a year, and that's it.
Yeah, because think about it. Sega made some good Spider-Man games for the Genesis and the Sega CD.
That's right, so why couldn't they come out with it?
But then Acclaim suddenly started making them. So these things just...
And that's why they
moved quick.
That Web of Fire, maybe it's hard to find then because maybe the license was running out. They rushed out like 12 of them. I never came across one. Anyway, that's it for beat 'em ups. I mean...
Maybe next time we'll cover platformers or something. Or
I love beat 'em ups.
Me too.
The satisfaction of the... That's why the Final Fight 2 was like you felt the hits when you punched him. The guy retracted his punch like when you punched him. It was like he slowed his punch.
Yeah, I love something like Turtles, but something like Final Fight is great because I love that bassy thud sound you get when you're punching the bad guy.
By the way, how shitty is Final Fight Guy that... You know, when I heard of Final Fight Guy, like I never knew it came out. It was a Blockbuster exclusive. You know, in Japan, I think it was more readily available. So Blockbuster, was a rental only. So Final Fight Guy's in the game now. It came out like I guess
but
a
it
year
replaces
later.
Cody.
They didn't tell you that. It's just like in the box, like, oh, that's good. And oh, by the way, still no 2 players. That
no Cody, and it's the same problem.
It's so cheap, and it goes for a ton of money. I have it loose. I would never look for the box. The box probably goes for hundreds, but it's just like, I love playing them. It's like I like to be able to switch the option 2-player. Yeah. Anyway, that's an annoyance. So if you have a Sega CD, look out for Final Fight.